Hi everybody. Thank you for joining my video. I hope this format works well on delivering some information to you. We have just finished week 10 of our art and architecture class in term 2. And I thought I would spend some time sharing some thoughts on term 2 so far, and then talking a little bit about your upcoming exam. I'm really looking forward to meeting with you again in term 3 and just going through picture studies and architecture and discussing what you've been reading and studying over the last term. Anyway, first of all, thank you for sending all of your work in. For the most part, it's been prompt, and I really I do appreciate that because it enables me to kind of see how everybody's doing at one time rather than piecemeal. I also really enjoyed seeing your sketches of Shrimp Girl, and what I noticed is that it's hard to draw faces, at least for me it's hard to draw faces, but a lot of you did it really well, and I would definitely, in fact, in all of them, I would have recognized that painting had I seen your sketch, and had I known, obviously I know what the painting looks like, I definitely would have recognized it. So I appreciate your work on that, because I know that for some people, sketching is not your favorite thing, so you did a really nice job. A couple of things I wanted to share about picture study in general that I think will help you moving forward for the rest of this term and next term. First of all, if you ever get stuck looking at a painting and thinking, man, I really just have no idea what to say about this painting, what I would encourage you to do is think about what John Muir Laws shared a couple of years ago at the CMI conference, and you've probably heard in some of your nature studies, is there's this 3-step process that he uses for looking at nature, and it can be applied to so many different things, whether it's art or it's music. And so I thought it would be a really good idea if some of you are having trouble approaching a painting and wondering, okay, well, how do I analyze this painting? You can use this process. The first thing that you would want to do is say, I notice. What do I notice about this painting? So let's go over some of the things that you can notice about a painting. First and foremost, you can notice its color. Obviously, that's kind of an obvious thing, actually, but some people leave that out. And I love one of you said that one of the things that you noticed about Gainsborough and Reynolds is their use of the same color palette. The same kind of blues and soft yellows and whites. And I thought that was a really good observation, because you're seeing what the trends were in portrait painting at that time. The ladies like to wear these lovely blue dresses, and you saw that. And so that kind of observation is good. Another thing you can say, I notice the lighting. Where is it coming from? What is the source of the lighting? And from what direction in the painting is it coming? And why is the artist using lighting in that way? Is it a fire? Is it the sun? Is it a street lamp that's creating the lighting? I noticed the perspective of the painting. So is the artist far away from something and they're painting it far off in the distance, like they were, like Constable was in one of the cathedrals, I think on the view of the Stour River near Dedham? Or is his perspective more close in, and that would be like Salisbury Cathedral? Another thing that helps you see perspective are, for example, the canopies of trees that kind of frame the cathedral. So you could talk about the perspective that the artist has. Something else you can notice, and that I noticed several of you did this past week, and it's a really good use of vocabulary, so I definitely want you to do that, is I notice in the background there are these things, or these people or animals. In the foreground, so that's in the front of the painting, this is different. And in the midground, maybe some other items or people or animals you want to talk about. And then ask yourself, okay, why are certain things in the foreground versus the background? In the foreground, they might be larger, right? Because things, as they get back, as they come toward us, are bigger. Things in the background are smaller. So think about that. Another one is you may want to notice the seasons, the change in the season between paintings. We're going to study the Rouen Cathedral in a couple of weeks, and that is a series of paintings by Monet, where he looked at a cathedral in different seasons, but also in different lightings, depending on what time of day it was. So look at the season. Some of you are studying the weather or have studied the weather, and you're studying clouds, and you're being able to connect that subject area with your picture study. And that's wonderful, because when you're saying, I see that Constable is using in this painting cumulus clouds because it's a fair, beautiful day, versus Turner using cumulonimbus clouds because it's a rainy, stormy day, then what you're doing is you are linking subject areas that are outside of artist study into this study. And that's very exciting. So anything that you're studying, whether it's architecture or weather or astronomy or anything else that you can connect into this picture is great. I think another one of you said that one of the castles or homes looked like Mr. Wemmick's home. And I thought that was a nice connection to Dickens. Okay, a couple of other things. Some of you mentioned the movement, how Constable used impasto, again, a great use of vocabulary word. That's heavy paint to really show movement in the river. And so you were looking at the motion of the water, and you were saying this painting has more movement to me. Those are great words to use to describe a painting. And one more example would be vanishing point. So if your painting has a vanishing point toward the back and your eye is being drawn to that vanishing point that out and ask yourself, why did the artist use that as a vanishing point? Is that something that helps the viewer kind of hone in or focus in on something in particular? So you want to do that. I actually want to read you a couple of examples from your work of really good observations, and so that you'll see kind of what I'm looking for in your ability not only to appreciate art, but really to assess it or to learn how to assess it. I'm not expecting perfection, but I'm definitely expecting progress between now and the end of the year. And certainly before we go on our field trip, I would love to hear you stand before a painting and really kind of be able to appreciate it more, because you know the kind of skill that comes in creating it. Okay, so one example, Constable's. I'm going to read this paragraph. Constable's painting technique. If you'll recall, I asked you to describe what are the techniques that he used in his painting that kind of made him seem radical, and what in particular was the use of a pentimento in authenticating a work. So let me read this paragraph. Constable used different techniques to show light and color in these paintings. Perspective, vanishing points, grisaille, and impasto are all things you can do with paint to make them seem different. You can use a vanishing point in the shadows in a painting to change the time in a painting. Grisaille can give a sense of light and grayscale. Impasto layers up paint to make foliage and other items seem three-dimensional. That's an excellent description there. Sometimes while painting, an artist might make a pentimento. That is a technique used to correct a mistake, or if the artist wants to change his picture. It also partially verifies the authenticity of a painting. Not many forgers can recreate the exact position of a pentimento because they may not have even known it. Back when Constable was painting, they did not have the X-ray technology that we have now that allows us to, as you saw in the Faker Fortune video, to see pentimentos. So this was a really great description, a really great answer in that particular case. Let me give you another example of some of the keen observations that one student made about the Strawberry Girl. This student said, in this painting, there are many colors, but the strawberries are very pink and not red, so they don't look very ripe. It's a very specific observation that's excellent. This girl looks very serious. Her hands look a little misshapen. So looking at what the young girl's expression was, how she held her hands, how she held the pouch in front of her, really helps you to understand the emotion or the mood of the painting. So go with those kinds of observations. And so those are the things, again, that's that first of the three steps. I notice these things. Now, the second step is it reminds me of. So, what does a painting remind you of, or what does a particular part of that painting remind you of? So, after you get that, I notice all of these things, and you might be noticing facts really about the painting. Now you want to start really relating to it. This reminds me of, um, a beautiful, actually, one of you said a beautiful scene in Kentucky because that constable painting in Ivanhoe Park had the plank fencing, right? So it reminds me of this. Another student who had taken my first class likened William Hogarth's painting of Southwark Fair to an artist that we had studied a couple of years ago, and he saw the relationship between the way that people were depicted in the Southwark Fair, and another painter had depicted people in his paintings as well. So when you're saying it reminds me of, it lets me know that you're thinking about a painting and making those connections. Now, the third thing that I'd like for your, or the third step I notice it reminds me of is I wonder. And I wonder are questions that I would like for you to ask about a painting. So a question like, and I have examples of several questions, and I sent some of these to you. Like even with portraits, there's a story being told in the way that a subject is dressed and what props are used and what the setting is. Ask yourself, I wonder why there's a dog in this painting. Was this his favorite dog? Was this a greyhound? Was he really into racing dogs? Was this an expensive, exotic dog that really lets us understand his wealth? Okay. I wonder why Gainsborough or Reynolds used architectural elements like columns or temples. That would make um, the man look more serious or powerful? Did it make Napoleon look more powerful, even though he was a rather small man in stature? Here's another question. I wonder, why would a man hold his hat in a painting instead of wearing it? So you don't have to have the answer to these questions, and I'm not expecting you to have the answers, but to ask these questions about a painting, now we can discuss them in class and see if anyone has thoughts or has even done some research. And in fact, a couple of you, when you had a question like this, you actually went out and looked for the answer. And that is outstanding. When you're looking for the answers as to why something is composed in a painting, why the artist has chosen to compose a painting this way, then that's excellent. Why dress a person in classical versus modern clothing? Was that because it was the style or the trend? Or again, was there a message that the artist was trying to convey about this person's solemnity or stoicism, or maybe he was like the Greco-Roman ideal, but he lived in neoclassical times? So that's a question. So I notice, it reminds me of, and I wonder, three step process you can do to really fully assess a painting. Your picture study should usually average around a half a page. I hope you're watching every one of the videos and taking notes, because you'll be responsible for that information for your exam as well. And when you do a picture study first and then you watch the video afterwards, you need to add notes. Anything you may have learned in the video or any addition to your picture study, go ahead and add that to your notes so that when you go read through your notes for the exam, you're prepared. And many of you are doing this, but I saw that some of you may not be. And so I just want to make sure that that's fresh in your mind after you read through your narrations again. And a couple of you have this idea of writing the video notes in a different color pen so that you know what was your thought and what was the thought of the art historians that are going to these different museums, and that's a great idea. Okay, again, you need to be using your vocabulary that you're learning, like impasto, vanishing point, Versailles, etc. And let's see if there's anything else. Yeah, at the end, I want to know what you think about a painting. So after you go through this 3-step process, you tell me what you think. Did you connect with it? Do you connect with landscapes more than you do with portraits? Why? These are things that I think are really easily talked about in class, but maybe not as easily written in your notebook. So if you can write down in your notebook how you responded, then we'll really enjoy sharing those things together in class. All right, there seemed to be a little bit of confusion about the constable essay, and so I did assign that as a regular day's work. It does count as extra credit, but it was still due on January 25th. So I'm going back to the syllabus. It's the only episode of Fake or Fortune that you're assigned to watch and write about during a regular school day. And I gave you 2 days to do it. It does count as extra credit, but it was due on January 25th. Now, all the other ones that I have assigned or will assign are totally optional, and you don't have to do them, but you do have to do the constable one. The other ones that I assigned, I've only assigned one other one, or not assigned. I've only linked to one other one, and that's the Gainsborough. And again, that's an optional one. You can do it on your own time, and you can get up to 4 points of extra credit on your final exam or on your second term exam. So if you complete your essay, I think 3 or 4 of you have turned it in, then when I assess those points will be added to your term 2 exam. If you don't turn in your Fake or Fortune essays until term 3, those will be added to your term 3 exam. Okay, so make sure you get those essays to me as soon as you can if you haven't already. All right, so let's talk about the exam, and then we'll be done. At the very most, there will only be 2 picture studies on your exam because I really feel like we need more practice with picture studies, and I think this grand conversation we're going to have in class time will be really, really helpful. But I've given some ideas of how to improve your picture studies, and I think that that most of you, because you've been doing them at home for hopefully a couple of years, if not more, will be able to develop those skills even in the next week or 2 and do well on your exam. The rest of your exam is going to be, there will be some sketching, there will be some describing terms, and there will be some comparing, I don't want to give it away, comparing different buildings of different periods or of the same period. And you will be responsible for the architecture, of course, that you have learned from week 1 to now. And you need to be very familiar with the style of different painters. Obviously, David and Delacroix are very different from Gainsborough and Reynolds and Millay. And so you need to be, hey, I've got a general sense of what Gainsborough's paintings look like and what Turner's paintings look like, and they're so different. I'm not going to put any on there that are close, that will confuse you. The 2 that I've chosen are very obviously a certain painter, so hopefully that will relieve your concern. If you have any questions, I would love for you to ask. I'm going to see if there's anything more I want to point out. I do want to say that the constable essays for Fake and Fortune that I've gotten so far have been really good. And I'm loving how you're basically telling the story of how they verified whether or not these paintings were authentic. And, it's a long episode, so you can't do it in a paragraph. And so far, the essays that I've had are just a little over 2 pages long. But again, if you want the full 4 points, you really do need to tell me as much as you can about that episode. So thank you all who have sent that in so far. And if you have any questions, please let me know. And I really look forward to seeing you on February the 28th.